In today's video, we have all kinds of NHL news and rumors to take a look at. We have some signings to discuss today, including in Seattle and Toronto, plus some PTOs. We have a lot of comments from Bill Daly at the NHL Player Media Tour in Vegas regarding a variety of things, including expansion, long-term injury reserve, as well as the no-state tax advantage that some cities have. Plus, we're looking at some additional rumors around the Leafs. Now that Robertson signed, what's next for him, and who else are they looking to add, which will require clearing some space via trade? We'll discuss all we've heard coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we've got a variety of things to take a look at today. Before we jump into today's news, though, I just want to do one of those days in hockey history. Sometimes days in August and September, there's not a lot of, historically speaking, moments to look back upon, but this one does. 6 years ago, in 2018, was the big Max Pacioretty trade between the Montreal Canadiens and the Vegas Golden Knights. Of course, we knew all the chatter around Pacioretty for several weeks and months leading into this day. It was, I think, a week or so prior to this day, around in that year. I think it was around the end of August. Max Pacioretty always did a charity golf tournament in Montreal, and of course, he always would invite, Habs ownership, management, lots of the teammates, etc., to be there. And I remember seeing a very awkward encounter with Marc Bergevin, Jeff Molson, etc., and it just was really weird. And he was traded within a short time later, within a week, I think it was, or so later. But Pacioretty went to Vegas in exchange for Nick Suzuki, who could become their future captain, Tomas Tatar, and a second-round pick in 2019. That 2019 pick was later traded to the Los Angeles Kings in a separate deal. But Tatar gave them some pretty good years there as well. Tatar was a pretty good top six forward for a bit. So they got good value from that trade. I mean, Suzuki alone gave them a long time, future viable, good young centerman who became the captain of the team. So, and Pacioretty was the former captain at the time as well. So certainly, I think Montreal did very well. Pacioretty had a couple of good years in Vegas, but didn't stay long term. I honestly would think it's definitely fair to say that Montreal won that deal. Vegas ended up giving Pacioretty away for nothing to Carolina. And then that's when he had his freak Achilles injury, and really he's been a downward spiral since. But now Pacioretty's back in the news, trying to get onto a team. Looks like he's heading to Toronto, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. Before we jump into that, though, some other quick news notes. Jordie Benn, longtime NHL player, player of over 12 years, 37 years of age, played this past year in Europe and Sweden, is announcing his retirement. He's got over 600 NHL games under his belt, so certainly congrats to Jordie Benn on a long, hard-fought career. Not somebody who had anything come easy to him. Obviously, his brother Jamie's had a lot more notoriety around him and more success, but Jordie Benn's had like I said, a long, hard-fought spot. Was always a physical defenseman, a block shots, penalty kill, and did a lot of the dirty work. So he certainly worked hard for a long time. So congrats to him on a long, extended career. A bunch of PTOs announced today as well. The Calgary Flames finally confirmed the Tyson Barrie PTO that we were talking about here. I think it was, I want to say, 2 to 3 days ago. That news came out from a couple of different good reporting sources that confirmed that. The Flames finally posted it today. We also seen the Flames sign rugged defenseman, veteran. I think he's 32 now, I believe, Jerard Fagerberg. He gets a 1-year, 2-way deal, $800K to NHL level, $350 at the American Hockey League level. Another PTO for the Rangers. Adam Erne's going to the Rangers camp, and Sam Gagner get a PTO with the Carolina Hurricanes. So obviously Sam Gagner continues to want to push things and continue going there as well. And then, of course, we also got another signing today in Seattle. They've extended veteran defenseman Adam Larsson on a 4-year deal at $5.25 million. There was some chatter throughout the offseason that the Kraken may trade Larsson. I don't really think it was more of a case of him being shopped. I think teams were kind of wondering what his future held. Because when you get players that are entering the final year of their contract, a lot of times, teams are going to start getting interested, wondering, are they going to hit the market as UFA? Are they going to be available at the trade deadline? And they start making inquiries. And then, of course, you get rumors floating around. Well, this team inquired on this player. And that's kind of how the rumor mill kind of churns around, right? A lot of it is other teams being interested, not so much the team that a player is looking to move them. But there was some speculation out there what his future was going to hold and if he could be a trade target. And that appears to not be the case now with Larsson signing a 4-year deal, $5.25. Ron Francis and the Kraken have spent a lot of money between this extension and bringing in some other veterans veterans over the course of the offseason. So we'll see what the Kraken do. They certainly had a disappointing year last year. I'm not so sure. Unless they get big steps forward from guys like Beniers and Wright and some of the young talent, I don't know that they can do a lot better this year, but we'll have to wait and see if I'm wrong on that one. Now, as I mentioned as well, we have some comments and some interesting commentary, you could say, from Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. Of course, we know the NHL media tour right now is in Vegas, so there's a rep from every team out there. And Bill Daly talked to the media. I know I referenced an article here from dailyfaceoff.com and Matt Larkin, who kind of summarized a lot of his comments and stuff. And one of the big topics that he was asked about was about how some markets have a distinct advantage with the no state tax. So there's a number of teams in the United States that there is, everybody pays a federal tax of some sort, right? But there's obviously a lot of taxes. Like in Canada, there's federal and provincial. In the U.S., there's federal and state. And of course, there's some states that have zero as their tax rate. So, clearly they get to keep a lot more of their money. They're not paying out a state tax on top of the federal tax like a lot of people would in other markets. Case in point, the teams in Florida. Florida is one of those states. The Golden Knights, obviously, in Vegas. You've got Nashville. And obviously some of these teams have done exceptionally well, right? So you can see, looking at the difference between, a good comparable is looking at William Nylander and Sam Reinhart. Both were drafted the same year. Both had monster years, contract years. And look at what they signed for. The difference between, what each is basically allows Florida to have an extra forward, an extra veteran there. They can pay their players less because they're going to get to keep a lot more of that money. Reinhart, I think the difference, it's over $2 million difference. I don't have all the details right in front of me, but that's substantial. $2 million player in the NHL is somebody who's going to play top 9 minutes for you. To have an extra veteran around who can qualify for that, that's substantial. So clearly it's an issue. I know I've heard some agents say that if players are smart, especially for playing in the Canadian markets, there are strategies they can employ to be able to keep more of the money, reduce what they pay as well. So I do think having the right agents and accountants will play a role in this as well. It's not all on the teams and the markets, but as Bill Daly said, he did admit that there's obviously been, it's been something that's come up more and more recently, that there's a lot more chatter around it, especially in the Canadian media, around the Canadian teams having a distinct disadvantage and having to overpay a lot of players to either stay or come to Canada, which is definitely true to some extent for sure. But he also went on to say that if you look at the markets that have the no state tax, there's a lot of other markets that might have higher taxes, but they might provide a lot of other advantages, whether it be cost of living, whether it be great spot to raise a family, whether it be a lot of opportunities for marketing and other, deals they can get in their off-ice stuff to make more money. Look at California. California is not a no-state tax. They're a heavily taxed market, but obviously there's its perks to being in LA. There's its perks to being in Toronto. I don't think anybody doubts that. New York, another prime example. There's lots of other advantages, right? So it's not fair for the league to be able to dictate what advantages are more important than others to the players. It's kind of up to the players to kind of decide that for themselves, but did acknowledge that, there's with the increased chatter that they have to look at it to some extent, and that there is been more chatter around it lately. So he said they do take the chatter seriously, and there has been some teams that have some appetite for change, but they're always looking for ways to make the system better. Didn't sound like there was anything remotely close on the horizon to look at it, though, more seriously and make anything official. One of the things he did say was, if the next 5 to 10 years kind of progress like what we've seen in the last 5 years, maybe there's more reason for change. And I think a lot of that, too, is not just the no state tax, but there's also the LTIR issue, which was brought up as well. And he did say that there seems to be more pushback and more teams that have more of an appetite for looking at the no cap in the playoffs, that whole system around, we've seen a lot of players being stashed on LTIR, then coming back for game one. We've seen Tampa do it. We've seen Vegas do it. And it's not saying that's the only reason they won a championship, because I don't think it's fair to say that. They're really good hockey teams. but it is an advantage. There's no doubt. And a lot of other teams are kind of getting fed up with it. So there does seem to be some appetite there, and did indicate that there's been more discussions and that they're talking to the GMs. Doesn't mean anything that's going to get done again, whether it be this year, next year. It's hard to say. But with more teams kind of having a appetite for change, the GMs are looking at ways to make adjustments so they can propose to see what they can come up with. So I guess there is a small sliver of hope that maybe there's some changes there when it comes to NHL expansion. He did, of course, the same kind of lingo. It's not a big priority for the NHL right now, but knowing that the talent pool and for hockey players is as deep as it is, they have no concerns about expanding for kind of, making sure that there's enough talent to go around. There's no worries there. Of course, there's lots of interest in other markets to expand. So from that, they're being open-minded. That's all he would say. So obviously, I do think that expansion is going to happen. I'd be surprised if we get through another season without it being officially announced that they're going to open the process. So we'll see. I don't know when that's going to happen, but I do believe it will happen in the not too distant future. I just think there's too many markets with prominent owners, and things are looking really promising in a few places, and they're going to see dollar signs and big money and not going to be able to resist, in my opinion. So we'll see. Keep in mind, the NHL might be similar size league when it comes to teams to the other big pro leagues, but with all the teams they have in Canada, the other leagues don't have that. So there's a lot of markets in the United States that they're not in, that Major League Baseball is, or NFL or what have you, and it's not the same kind of setup. So there's still lots of U.S. markets that's untapped for the NHL. So with the game being as popular as it is in Canada, I think it allows the NHL maybe more opportunity than the other leagues even to be a bigger league. So we'll see where that goes, but I do think we'll see expansion notes sometime this year. Hard to say exactly when. Now, as I mentioned, on the Leafs, we got some news earlier today regarding Nick Robertson signing a one-year deal, $875,000, ends the stalemate. Or at least we thought it did, and then it wasn't too long, within probably an hour or two of that news coming out, we saw news from NHL insider for Daily Faceoff, Frank Seravalli, reporting on his X account that Robertson is still very likely to be traded. That he still doesn't think that Robertson's going to be a Leaf when training camp opens. Well, training camp's not that far away. And he said that basically players are easier to trade with a contract than being unsigned. And that is true. I can testify to that. We've seen enough over the years that knowing a player is signed and how much they're signed for will make that a more valuable asset. There's no doubt. And it eliminates the offer sheet possibility as well, which we knew did exist, but seemed unlikely, but you just never know after what we've seen this year with the Blues and the Oilers. So with all that said, with Robertson still being potentially on the move, he did say there's lots of interest, and I have no doubt there would be. Like we said last year, he put up 14 goals, and I've talked about a number of scenarios in the past 7 to 10 days that I think make great sense for the Leafs to consider. So I have no doubt the interest is real, and if Seravalli's onto something, that maybe there is a chance he'll be traded. Maybe they resist that, but it does seem like they're also working on another trade. So regardless of what happens with Robertson, enough reporters, including Dave Pagnotta, we've heard it from Seravalli and others, that Max Pacioretty is going to be a Leaf. He may have to start training camp on a PTO, depending on if they have the trade done or not, but they are working on a trade to alleviate roster and cap space. So who are they going to move is the question. And now there's also the future of defenseman Jani Hakanpää, who Chris Johnson, who I know have said he's reported a few times here recently that he feels more optimism than he did a while back, that this could still happen and that he could still possibly end up being a Leaf as well. Again, there was rumored to be around $1.5 million. Again, they need some space. After signing Robertson, there's really not much there. I would suspect Pacioretty's probably going to be like a 1 year, $1 million type of thing. Hakanpää, 1.5 is what the rumored number was. So that leaves us at $2.5 million. Now, I think they have around, it's about 300,000 or something like that in space. Not enough to sign a player, but there is a little bit there. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to move a player that's probably, or players of more than $2 million. Even if they get Hakanpää to come down a little bit to level it out. Now, of course, if Robertson is one of those players that are traded, then that $875 that he signed for today will come off the books, right? So now that 2.5 you're looking for, well, now you're down to like, 1.7, 1.8 range or whatever it works out to. So, I think a player that might be a prime candidate I would suggest Connor Timmins and maybe a Carly Yarncroke. To me, they're kind of the players that kind of make the most sense. I know Timmins is making, I think, 1.1. He could easily take the... if he removes Timmins, that's 1.1 off the books. I mean, maybe, I don't know if they can talk Hockenpah to take him 1.1 or not. And maybe if they move Robertson, well, then if they move Robertson, though, I suspect they're going to get another young player back who could end up on the roster. So it's probably going to be somebody else, again, that moves besides Timmins. So you're looking at, I wonder about Ryan Reeves. I do. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of, we really gave him 3 years. I don't think it's going to be easy to do, but I wonder about him. Yarncroke comes to mind. Timmins comes to mind. Maybe David Kampf. I'm surprised they gave him as much term, but, at the same time, they need a 4C. I don't know. They're definitely working on a cost-cutting trade or two to bring Pacioretty in for sure, with the possibility of Hockenpah as well. And, even though Sarah Valley said Robertson is more likely to be traded, I wouldn't be shocked if he's right, but I'm going to say that I wouldn't be shocked if he's wrong too. And just because he thinks it's more likely, it just means that they're not necessarily completely sold on not moving him. But they haven't really, from what we've heard from other sources on this, it sounds like they haven't really tried that hard to trade him because they preferred to sign him. So, maybe they didn't want to really push hard on trading him until they sign him. We'll have to wait and see. But there's definitely lots of balls in the air when it comes to the Maple Leafs, whether it be Robertson, whether it be Timmins, whether it be Yarncroke, or some of these other, depth players, if you will. To bring in these other guys, it sounds like it's something they're working on. I'm not sure how imminent it is, but sometime between now and camp, I'd be quite surprised if we don't see at least one cost-cutting trade to make room to bring in one of these guys. If not, we could see Pacioretty and Hockenpah go into camp on PTOs as they continue to work at that, and they'll hopefully have it figured out before the regular season starts. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.